Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.41, and in this lesson I'm going to take you through a variety of freeware VST plugins that are available on both Mac and PC that will evoke some type of some type of analog distortion. So the first thing I need to mention is a huge disclaimer, and that's, of course, you do not need any plugins to make interesting music. You can do it with what's built into your digital audio workstation. There is so much stuff inside of Bitwig that you probably still haven't explored that you should explore before pulling from all these different plugin manufacturers and sites. Now, at least with freeware, it's free, so it's okay if you get it and then never use it. But the one thing you don't want to do, which I've done in the past, is buy something and then just never even use it. Then you feel super guilty and you feel like you need to use it, when in reality you probably don't. Okay, so I'm going to walk through and I'm going to show you these guys, but I do want you to consider using the Bitwig Distortion as your go-to device. And I really hate to compare DAWs. I think it's really dumb. I think it's like comparing painters from different eras. We can't compare Da Vinci and Degas because they come from completely different times with completely different philosophies. And the digital audio workstation is exactly the same. It's like comparing apples to oranges. You just can't do it. It doesn't make sense to compare them because they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses, and they all have their own approach to how they go about making music. But I will say that in Ableton Live, there are so many great distortion and saturation tools that's the one area that I hope Bitwig catches up in version 2.0. Everything else I'd be fine with staying completely the same, but I'd love to have very specific types of distortion that are clearly labeled, maybe a set of like guitar effects pedals and a good tape saturation, those sorts of things I would absolutely love to have inside of this program. But we already know that the distortion device is very powerful, and that should be your go-to. You should really learn this inside and out before drawing upon and pulling from a bunch of different plugins, which, as you can see, are going to take up a decent amount of signal processing. And I have like 6 or 7 plugins on here, and it's already taking up a bunch of DSP, which if I was to just load up 100 polysynths and distortion, I wouldn't maybe even peak out that high. So we're just going to walk through a bunch of these guys. I'm going to pull up the span and we're going to hear the differences. And this is the sound that I've decided we're going to use to start with. I've actually added some movement into it as well. You can see the frequency and resonance moving. That's a good test for these different distortion models because it's going to let us hear how they respond when our actual frequency spectrum is changing. Okay, so that's why I've done that. This is what it sounds like. Great, so we're all familiar with that. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on the spectrum so we can maybe really see where things are moving around. I'll turn on the Bitwig Distortion. Again, I'm not going to mess with this pre-filter, but you do have access to it, and maybe you know where you really want to hype the harmonics in advance. So maybe you really know you want to hype at 2K. So you could go to that 2K and bring that up even more and then start to apply distortion. But for our case, let's not worry about that too much. I'm going to just play this back. And now we can listen to our different models. When the symmetry is perfect, it's really like a solid state model. And then as we pull to either the left or the right, we're kind of evoking more of a tube-based saturation just with the different coloration. Okay, so that's Bitwig's own distortion. It's really powerful. It's really good. You can get a lot of variation here with the symmetry, and that's where the real strength in this plugin lies. When you really crank the drive, you'll also notice that you'll get more upper harmonics as well. The other great thing about the Bitwig one is that we can actually tune and add additional effects to the distortion itself, which you really can't do any other way as easily as that, which is really cool. All right, so let's delete that. Up next, we have the IVGI from Clang Helm. You guys know how much I love this one. This one applies saturation and also little bits of compression. So it will compress your sound. You have to be ready for that. If we leave the output at 0 and we increase the drive, you'll hear that. And then we can change the frequency response. So if we go down really low, I think it sounds a little bit more tubey. As we go up high, we're going to get something that sounds a little bit more like a tape style hiss. Okay, so those are the variances in that. We can listen to what this sounds like when we really crank some settings. Let's put the drive about halfway. And this asim mix is going to determine the characteristic of the compressor. So do we want a super colored compressor? We can pull it way down, or do we want something very transparent? So let's like really cook up the settings on this thing so we can hear what it does. So you can hopefully hear those changes. You could also go in and export and bounce a bunch of different audio clips with various settings so you can hear some of those differences. Up next, we have a plugin called the Free Fuzz. This one's unique because it gives us 4 different modes. And if you guys want to be fun and clever, you could actually go in here with a sine wave and check and see the different harmonics that pop up, and you might be able to figure out some of the different models that this is trying to emulate. So this is a fun one. It's very easy to use. All we have is a saturation knob. The harder we drive the input, the more saturation is going to occur. So let's go ahead and check this thing out. Oh, okay. I had no idea what that P button did, so that apparently saves the preset. I've never seen that before. So let's go ahead and just cook the signal. So that's type A. One of these I know is really, really harsh, so we have to be careful about that. Let's go to type B next. Yep, that's the one. So you can see how much this one loves those upper harmonics. Let's move on to C. That has a much different character to what we heard with B. And last but not least, we have D. So that's definitely a fun one that you could actually add at different points. So like, let's say with a different signal, we were running it through like a chorus and then a reverb or then a delay. And if we wanted to try to keep emulating like analog technology there, we could maybe use some of those different modes and just put in little bits of distortion, 15, 7, 8, 9, 10%. The Free Fuzz, definitely check it out. We've already seen the R47. This is a solid state emulation of the famous Proco Rat. And we can go ahead and dial this one in. Quality, we're going to put that up to high, put the drive all the way down. We'll open up the filter. So on the right sounds, that can be really useful. This is a more subtle one, and this is the Sony Q, and this one's modeled after an API and a Pultec. But what we have here and what we're going to focus on is the drive. So right now we're not even really doing anything with any of these filters. The harder we drive the input, the more drive will occur over here. And this one's subtle. This one's super warm. I really like this one. I don't even use the EQ that much. I pretty much use this thing specifically for these characteristics in here. But if you do mess with these low, mids, and highs, it's going to give you more of an analog sounding equalizer. So let's check out what this drive knob does. We also have this wow. This applies like a different kind of distortion, but it can be kind of phasey. So if you're working with low end material and you flip this on, you better make sure you check it with your speakers and not just with your headphones to make sure you're not having any serious phase cancellation. Let's just cook it up. You can see we clip the output there. If we really want to go crazy, we can drive the input really hard and then try to compensate it here with the output. So this one's incredibly warm, incredibly rich. Highly recommended. It can be kind of heavier on CPU though than some of the other things. We've already looked at the tall tube. We can look at it again quickly. We have a couple different settings here. If we want to add in like more of amplifier type tube sound or incredibly hard, so super grimy guitar amp sound, we can do that. On this one, the controls are super finicky. And again, if we drive the input real hard, we get some different sounds. And if you want to go crazy, you can turn both on. And that one will apply some gain reduction as well, a bit of compression there. So feel free to check that out, see what you can do with it. Up next, we have the Voxengo tube, which we've already looked at. So this one will give us two different modes. One mode is super grainy. And we also have this really cool additional saturation stage, which if we turn it on and go up to 8 times oversampling is going to give us very high quality on that output. And then mode 1 is a little bit more intense. Perhaps I got that backwards. Let's see. Mode 2. My bad, guys. Mode 2 is kind of the more intense guitar amp sounding. Mode 1's a bit warmer and richer. Just a couple more to go. We have the Camel Crusher here. This one's incredibly popular. It has a whole lot of different things. Even has a fat mode on here with the compressor. So if you want to go beyond just distortion and also add in a bit of compression, you can do that too. For right now, let's just turn these modes all off. We have two different distortion models. We have a mechanical distortion. And so the mechanical distortion is going to be similar to like mode 2 on that Voxengo plugin we just looked like. And the tube mode is going to be like mode 1, a little bit warmer. And then we could also turn on the compressor in fat mode. So you can obviously hear what that's capable of. And last but not least, we come to the one and only Nebula. Now, I didn't want to show this one to you guys because this is the quintessential I'm going to get myself super distracted and never finish anything plugin. Nebula's awesome, but at the same time, it can be very fickle. My analogy to Nebula is it's like that ex-girlfriend or boyfriend you might have who you still have feelings for, but at the same time, like if you're in a situation where you guys might come into contact, you're super nervous and you just don't really want to have that experience. And then you do, and you're kind of like, this is weird. But as time goes on, you start to like warm up to the person again. And by the end, you're very happy that you sat down and had that talk or had that coffee or whatever. But then once that person leaves, you know, all those old feelings and everything else, all the problems rise to the surface again. So that's what I compare Nebula to. It's great, but at the same time, it can give you so many headaches, and you get to a point where you're just scared to drop it on anything. I really only use Nebula in like my mixing and possibly some mastering applications because it is so finicky, and really you want to use this for subtle effects, nothing major. And I would honestly not really recommend dropping it multiple times in a line unless you're at that stage where everything's pretty much as audio, because you can get into some trouble with this guy. So this is the free version of Nebula. It comes with a lot of great programs, and you can see it ranges from everything from a reverb to panning and chorus, and even like a Leslie cabinet, which we've talked about before. But we're going to focus on specifically the preamp section, and we also have here a tape section as well. And we've talked about tape saturation before. This is going to give us maybe a better representation of what that's all about. So let's start with the tape settings, and then we'll go to the preamp settings. I kind of have a feeling that at some point this is like going to die on me. So just be ready for that. Getting this thing to work can be kind of hard. And I really, really strongly encourage you guys, if you're going to use this, really limit yourself to just using it for like 5 minutes. Get a setting you like, bounce to audio, and delete it. Because otherwise you might really go down the rabbit hole and never come back. Okay, so we'll start with the tape variations. We have this thing called EQ tape warm bus. Controls are very simple. We have a drive parameter here. We also have our input and our output. Be very careful adjusting inputs and outputs. It's not meant to be driven super hard at the input stage. So that's what the drive is going to be for. This is going to be subtle, but we should be able to hear it if we really push it. So hopefully you guys can hear that. If you want to take it further, feel free to download this and check it out. We have a couple of other tape plugins. We have this color tape setting here. And again, I'm going to try to be careful with this. Great. We're not even doing anything and we're having problems. So those clicking sounds, you do not want those clicking sounds. So let's see if I can get rid of those and then we can hear what this is doing. So you guys can see how much of a jerk this plugin is. But if we get the settings just right, it can be really, really nice. We also have a tape 5042. And we can listen to this one if it will load. All right, let's take a listen to this guy. And this one, we also have a control over inches per second, okay? So the speed of the tape machine, the slower we go, the more we're gonna take away from the high end, the more we're gonna kind of lose clarity in the sound, but the warmer it usually will become as a result. So we'll just put this on its lowest setting at 7.5, just so we can hopefully hear the effect. Okay, but what I really want to show you are the various preamps in here. I'll just go through one of them now. If you download it, there's a whole bunch of different preamps you can listen to. This one sounds pretty good. Let me just turn up my volume. Jeez. This one again is awful nice, but we're getting into some nasty feedback problems. And let's just also listen to this Alex B Digitube. And see, when you listen to something like that with even no drive on it, it really makes you want to check out Nebula, I have to say. That's just a really warm, fat, rich sound that no plugin can really emulate, because this is literally like a technology that will sample the actual tube itself by like running a sine wave through it and then using another sine wave in reverse in phase cancellation, so that you're just left with like the feedback. It's a pretty advanced technology, and because of that, you know, we definitely will run into a bunch of different problems. But you can just listen to this guy. And just hear right away how powerful that is. So I know this has been a very lengthy video, And ultimately, you don't have to watch this one at all. Most people have probably clicked off, but those are some various free tools that you have access to if you want them. If you have any additional questions about any of these, please let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. But otherwise, have a good day, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.